Hello, everybody. Mrs. Putney here, and today we're going to read a play called The Gift of the Magi. This is by O. Henry. The characters in the play are narrators 1, 2, and 3, Della, a young woman, Jim, Della's husband, Sidney, the janitor in Jim and Della's apartment building, Mrs. Porter, a neighbor, Madame Sophie, a wig maker, and then a shopkeeper. The prologue gives you introduction to what's happening and sets up the play. The holidays are near, a time of love and celebration, and gifts too. Many people associate the tradition of giving gifts at Christmas time with the Magi. According to the Bible, the Magi were 3 men who traveled a great distance to give gifts to baby Jesus. They are often called the wise men. But today, let us tell you a tale about some other gift givers. Scene 1, New York City, 2 days before Christmas in the year 1900. Della and Jim are a young married couple living in New York City. What a splendid walk that was! Indeed it was, Della. Central Park at Christmas time is always so delightful. What shall we do now? Let's walk down Broadway and window shop. We haven't any money. It costs nothing to look. Besides, we can dream, can't we? Why, look here. Look at these scarves. Ah, wouldn't I be lovely wearing one of those? Don't be silly. You're lovely just as you are. And look at those combs. I've admired them forever. Pure tortoiseshell. Imagine how they look in my hair. Della, your hair is already long and beautiful. Look, it's almost to your knees. Do you think so, Jim? Do you really think I'm beautiful? I may be poor, Della, but I'm the luckiest man in all of New York. Scene 2. The next morning, Jim and Della's apartment. Jim and Della live in a shabby little one-room apartment. But Jim does have one possession which he is proud of, his pocket watch. Jim checks his watch. I must be off to work. Don't be home late, Jim. I'll put in my time and nothing more. You look so sophisticated when you glance at your watch. Do I? Even with this old leather strap I use in place of a chain? Della hugs him. Who's to notice the strap when such a handsome man is holding such a glorious watch? Jim leaves for his office. On the way out, he waves to the janitor, Sidney. Good morning, Mr. Young. Off to work already, are you? Jim checks his watch. I mustn't be late for work, Sidney. No, sir. That's quite a watch. It was my grandfather's. Keeps perfect time. It's quite remarkable. Sidney, about my mailbox. It says on it, Mr. James Dillingham Young, just like you asked. That's it. Perhaps it would be best if it just said Mr. James D. Young. Oh, no, sir. Dillingham sounds so distinguished. Distinguished for a man who makes $30 a week? Not for a man who makes a mere 20. Sidney shakes his head and frowns. Another pay cut. Times are hard. Jim checks his watch. Yes, they are, Sidney. But whether $20 or $30 a week, I must be on time. Scene 3. Della in Jim's apartment. Like Jim, Della has one treasure, her long, beautiful hair. Della and her neighbor sit together at the kitchen table. Della's counting coins. 85, 86, $1.87. No matter how often I count it, Mrs. Porter, the amount never changes. Of course not, dear, but a penny saved is a penny earned. And how I've earned these pennies, Mrs. Porter. I've learned to drive a hard bargain. The grocer, the butcher, the milkman, I think they cringe when they see me coming. I'll take the worst cuts of meat to save a penny, and the bruised fruit to save 2. Don't you worry now, dear. Things will turn around for you too. I just know it. Della's crying. But it's Christmas Eve. $1.87. What can I buy my wonderful Jim with $1.87? Now, don't cry, Della. Just then, Della happens to glance in the mirror. She catches sight of her long, beautiful hair rippling and shining like a cascade of brown water. She stands for a moment, and a final tear splashes on the worn carpet. I have it, Mrs. Porter. Della's face grows pale as she quickly arranges her hair into a bun. Mrs. Porter is concerned. Oh, Della, you mustn't. I must, for Jim, for Christmas. On goes Della's old brown coat and old brown hat, and with a whirl of her skirts and a brilliant sparkle still in her eye, she flutters out the door and down the stairs into the street. Scene 4, on Broadway. Moments later, Della arrives at Madame Sophie's hair goods of all kinds. Will you buy my hair? I do buy hair. Take off your hat and let's have a look at it. Down ripples the brown cascade. What could be so important that you'd sacrifice such lovely hair? I'd sacrifice anything for my Jim. How much is it worth? Your hair? $20. I'll take it. Her hair gone and $20 crumpled in her fist, Della rushes out on the street. Della talks to herself. Now for Jim's present. For 2 hours, Della ransacks the stores searching for that special something. He needs a new overcoat, and every day he goes off to work without gloves to warm his hands. But this gift must be something precious, something worthy of the honor of being owned by Jim. Narrator 2. She soon spots just the thing. May I help you? Might I see that watch chain? Why, certainly, miss. It's platinum. A fine chain, but very expensive. It's so perfect for my husband. With a chain like this on his watch, he could check the time in anyone's company. How much is it? $21. I'll take it. Scene 5. Jim and Della's apartment. How bad is it, Mrs. Porter? A pretty thing like you. You're adorable with or without your hair. We'll curl what's left of it. That's what we'll do. We'll curl it. Within 40 minutes, Della's head is covered with tiny curls. That's not so bad now, is it? But when Della looks at her reflection in the mirror, she remains worried. If Jim doesn't faint before he takes a second look, he'll say I look like a truant schoolboy. A boy. Now. But what could I do with $1.87? I'll go now, before Jim gets home. Yes, you better. He's never late. Mrs. Porter leaves. Don't you worry now. It'll be all right. Della. Della has an aside here. An aside means that she's saying this out loud, but it's supposed to represent her internal thoughts. Oh, please let him still think I'm pretty. A moment after Mrs. Porter leaves, Jim steps in. Seeing Della, he freezes. He says nothing. He merely stands there with a peculiar expression on his face. Jim, darling, don't stare at me this way. I had my hair cut off and sold it because I couldn't have lived through a Christmas without giving you a present. It'll grow back. Jim continues to stare at Della. He seems to be in a trance. Della, almost crying. You don't mind, do you, Jim? My hair grows awfully fast. Jim, say something. You can't imagine what a wonderful gift I have for you. Jim is confused. You cut off your hair? Della's crying. And sold it. Don't you like me just as well anyhow? I'm still me without my hair, aren't I? Jim looks around the room curiously. He comes out of his trance. You say your hair is gone? Don't look for it. It's gone. I did it for you. Jim hugs her. Don't make any mistake, Della. I don't think there's anything in the way of a haircut that could make me love you any less. But if you unwrap this present, you'll see why you took me by surprise. Della unwraps the gift and screams for joy, then cries aloud. For there are the combs, the precious tortoiseshell combs she'd so long desired, without the hope of ever having. My hair does grow fast, Jim. Jim has not yet seen his present. Della holds it out for him in her open palm. Della's excited. Isn't it dandy, Jim? Just put it on your watch. I want to see how it looks. Jim tumbles on the sofa and begins to laugh. Della, I sold the watch to get the money to buy your combs. Now they laugh together. Let's put our presents away and keep them for a while. They're too nice to use just yet. And now, suppose we have some dinner. Today, we've told you of the two people who sacrificed their greatest treasures. You might think they were foolish. But in a word to the wise, let us conclude with this. Of all who give and receive gifts, these two were the wisest. They are the Magi. Now that we're done, I want you to think about what type of irony and what the irony is in the story. You'll have to answer questions in a quiz in a little bit. Here's a paired text. It's nonfiction. I want you to think about what it has in common with the play. A real-life Magi. In 2006, Hannah Salwin, then 14 years old, was with her dad driving home from a sleepover. At a traffic light, she looked out the window and saw an expensive Mercedes next to them. On the sidewalk next to the Mercedes was a homeless man begging for food. Dad, Hannah said, if that man had a less nice car, the other man could have a meal. They drove away, but the idea stuck in Hannah's mind. How the well-off could help the poor by doing with less. She kept bringing up with her parents until finally her mom asked, What do you want us to do, sell the house? Hannah's answer was yes. Shockingly, Hannah's parents did just that. They sold their fancy home, bought a more modest one, and donated the difference, nearly $1 million, to the Hunger Project, an organization that fights poverty and hunger in Africa. Later, they wrote about their experience in a book called The Power of Half. Now the Salwins live in a house that is half the size of their old one, but their hearts feel twice as big. Thank you for joining me today. Have a fabulous day.